I am going to do which worked very well with the previous class. I'm hoping to do the same. What I'm going to do, I think I'm going to just do one lab exam. So, because Bio 242 is very intense, it's more clinical, I like it. And the lab exam, I don't feel bad because the lab exam is really just applying what you learned in the lecture. So you need to still be opening up your cats, looking at your microscopes. Towards the end, we're going to have one lab exam which will involve everything. And I do have like pop quizzes maybe for the blood smear. I'll have a blood slides there and you identify which one is a neutrophil, a neutrophil, basophil, all of that stuff, okay? But we will concentrate more on clinical application, okay? So if that's okay with you. And so you will see still with Canvas, I noticed I got a few text messages. I wasn't here, and when I'm on vacation, I'm on vacation. I don't answer text messages while I'm on vacation. And so a lot of the students were asking, do you still drop the lowest score? I do, I drop the lowest scoring test. But with the Canvas, I don't know, maybe I don't know how to do it. The Canvas won't do it for me. So I have to do it individually. And so as I was computing all your grades, I would drop. So your lowest scoring test is not the same as hers. So it has to be individual. So still all your grades are shown on Canvas, but when it comes to grading it, I drop the lowest scoring test. However, for this quarter, I do not drop anything. Everything counts for your grade from now on. Even with Bio 241, even with Bio 175. Only because I'm so tired of students saying I didn't drop the lowest scoring test and then they say, oh, I'm sorry, you did drop it. So I'm just going to, besides you're all going to do well. There will be a lot of take-home tests. There will be a lot of, did you buy your Bio 242 worksheets?
Is it the same one from last summer?
Yes.
Oh, good.
You have the Bio 242 already?
Remember, because I canceled summer.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay. So
they're available they're like the Bio 241 worksheets?
yes. So don't forget, everything counts. But you will see that it's not going to be hard. You're going to do only if you have so much to do, you're not submitting the worksheets on time, then you're going to be overwhelmed. I had a student, she took Bio 241 and she got an A with me for Bio 241. She only got a B this past quarter because, I don't know, something about personal. You're going to fall behind. So just keep up, okay? Is this Bio 242 winter? Oh, fall. We are winter, correct?
Yep. Unless there's been a major rift in space and time.
Word down one. So let's look at the syllabus. So I have a lot of ABG practice exams over here, a lot of, you're going to do that one when we get to that topic. By the way, always bring your textbook with you, okay? I always have a lot of worksheets that I will have you open your book. The purpose of you buying the book is so you open that. You open it for the first 15 chapters. You're not going to be done opening it. And sometimes, last minute I say open book. So always bring your book. That book is an amazing book. I like the way they presented it. Okay, so here, I thought are you Bio 242? So it's not 11. Oh, I have two Bio 242 classes, right? So never mind. It's the same anyway. So
which book are you using? Because it switched from ours.
No. It's the same.
Ours was 9.
Yeah, we have the 10th edition.
Okay.
But it's okay.
Well, I have them both. I just didn't know which one you were using.
So we're going to do the 10th edition. So you see, I don't drop any lecture test. It's not going to be hard. Most of the, not most, but there's a lot of the lecture tests that will be take home. And you know, the take home, a lot of students do well with take home tests. And I don't feel bad. Even if it's a take home test, I don't feel bad because you're still forced to open your book and you still learn, okay? There will be some tests that you have to take here, so you have to bring your brain with you. Just so I know that, you know, you do deserve to get an A, because if it's all take home, you will all get A's, okay? But it's not impossible to get an A, right? There's this group presentation, maybe I will think about that. Then give me 1 week to think about it. It's a diet presentation, so there's a chapter 25 and 24, nutrition, metabolism. Usually, instead of doing a lecture, I ask students present on a diet, and I give you I say you present the Mediterranean diet, you present the Atkins diet. I used to do that, so I'm not sure. I still like to do the lecture, so we'll see, okay? And this one is what I'm talking about. So you know the comprehensive final exam is the same, okay? And this one, with the lab practica, you see it says there's 3 lab exams, but for you I'm going to do 1 lab exam, and it's going to be towards the end, so you have to, and I don't know what I'm going to tell you. So how I do this lab exam, let's say for you, I want you to discuss the digestive system. So you start with the oral cavity, with the salivary glands, then maybe for you, tell me the circulation, the beginning of blood, deoxygenated blood until it leaves and pumps oxygenated blood, and then maybe for you, I'll say pulmonary system, whatever. So you need to always know your body parts, the cat, right? Your dissection, and then our microscope. Still look at our microscopes, histology. There will be some worksheets where you'll still be required to draw. So you need to bring your colored pencils. Wendy has colored pencils here. And the worksheets. So there will be a lot of worksheets. The worksheets, if you have your Bio 242 worksheets, what I do usually, I tell you, so today we're going to do our endocrine worksheet, but the worksheet is not due today. It's always due next week. I give you 1 week because I want you to really understand the questions that go with the worksheet. Okay? Okay? And like I won't Bio 249, but your grade will be 75% from lecture and 25% from lab. Okay? And then, of course, if you want to get an A, you want to shoot for 91%, that's A minus. But if it's solid A, 97%. What else was I going to say? Same style, sometimes partner test, just like before, okay? Okay, so that's it. You have any questions? Let me just check our people. Oh, this is the other bite.
If you go to that one, 511's us.
So, Calistasia, Ricky, Emily. So, Emily Mansfield, that's here, right?
Yeah.
Shadow. Okay, so everyone is here. Okay, so we start with our lecture. Do you have any questions? Did you all have a good break?
Yeah. Did you?
Yes, of course. We went to Washington, D.C.
Oh, that's exciting.
Okay. So
Oh,
today,
that makes my OCD just go.
what happened?
Your screen. I want to put them all in categories.
Oh.
I want to put them all in boxes.
By the way, so this is Callista and the other one is Emily. and you'll get to know the others, okay? So, the endocrine system, this is the other homeostasis system, right? If you think about it, have you ever wondered how it was? When you were born, you were just this little, and look at you now, you grow, right? You don't look the same as your baby pictures. For one thing, you got bigger. And then, you remember, for the girls, we didn't have boobs. We didn't have anything before. Then it starts showing up, right? How did that happen, right? We have the capacity to become pregnant, all of that. Did you know that, like, if you have we take the endocrine system for granted. If you have a boo-boo, after a few days, you see it swelling. Why do you think that happened? Do you think that, we know that white blood cells, I know you know white blood cells, they are there to fight infection. But white blood cells cannot go to the site of injury unless they are cold. So this is the importance of your endocrine system. Remember, communication? So our body really has two communication systems. The nervous system and the endocrine system. You understand? Right? The nervous system, we know, is the one, let's say, that detects when the sugar level is low, right? Then we have chemoreceptors. You remember chemoreceptors in the hypothalamus? They detect when the glucose level goes down, the blood that's flowing to your brain reaches the hypothalamus. When the glucose level is down, the chemoreceptors of the brain sense that, and they send an impulse to your stomach. You interpret that as hunger. That's one communication system, the nervous system. The endocrine system is another way for communication. This one is made up of endocrine glands from head to toe. And their job is to secrete hormones. So the way they communicate with our body is by releasing hormones. The nervous system, they communicate by releasing, what do you call that? Neurotransmitters, remember? So here, they do that by releasing hormones. And the hormones are secreted into the blood. I'm going to go to this picture. Look at the difference between your nervous system and your endocrine system. Look at, this is your endocrine gland. What tissue? What is it? Epithelium, connective muscle, or nervous tissue? Yes, it's a gland. Very good. So these are the endocrine cells that make up your gland, and they make the hormone. And look at where the hormone is secreted. It is released into the blood, and it circulates, and it goes to the target organ. Let's say prolactin is your milk-producing, right, hormone. That's the hormone that tells your mammary glands to make milk. So it's secreted by your brain, and it jumps in the blood, and it goes to your mammary gland. Then, when the prolactin enters your mammary gland cells, they start making milk. Okay? Look at with your neurons, the nervous system. They secrete neurotransmitters, but they secrete it locally, and it's not into the blood. Do you remember there was one in the sympathetic nervous system where adrenaline is secreted into the blood, but most of them are secreted locally. Okay? So, we're going to study the major endocrine glands, your hypothalamus, your thyroid, parathyroid. The others, like the endocrine tissue in your heart, kidneys, the GI tract, we're going to study them when we get to that chapter. Okay? Before we move on, so don't forget, what are hormones? They're chemicals. What are neurotransmitters? They're also chemicals. Both of them are chemicals. I told you that the hormones are secreted by your endocrine glands, and they travel in the blood. If you think about it, I talked about prolactin, which is a hormone that tells our mammary glands to make milk. Did you ever wonder if the prolactin is secreted into the blood, it must be circulating from head to toe. Does it make sense? But why is it only the breast tissue that responds to prolactin? I wonder why. All of these endocrine glands, they secrete hormones into the blood, but only what you call a target responds to it. How come? The answer is in the word receptors. So you see, even though the hormone is being secreted into the blood, only the target organ, that's why it's called a target organ, because the target organ has the receptor for that hormone. Okay? Maybe I'll ask you that, or maybe someone will ask you. Now you understand. Even though it's being secreted into the blood, it's only the target organ that will respond because they have receptors. For the others, the hormone will just keep passing through. They don't have receptors, so they will not be affected. Okay? We have different types of hormones. You have your lipid-derived hormones, water-soluble hormones. I don't really care too much about this one, okay? What I want you to know is the action of the individual hormones. And what I want you to understand is, how do hormones exert their effect? Okay? That's the more important thing. More important for you to know the individual hormones and how do they exert their effect. Do you remember this? What is this being shown here? What's this event? Yes, very good, protein synthesis. Very good, okay? So all hormones, there are two general classes of hormones, water-soluble and lipid-soluble hormones. But whether it's water-soluble, the only difference between water-soluble and lipid-soluble, I'm going to go quickly to this one slide here. This is a lipid-soluble hormone, meaning it's able to enter the cell directly. The target cell is just able to enter it right away. Whereas a water-soluble hormone cannot enter the cell directly, so it still affects the protein synthesis activity of the target cell, but indirectly. So it can't go inside. It's like it relays the message. But if you trace this, it still affects the protein synthesis activity of its target cell. So it doesn't matter what chemical composition is the hormone. The effect of every hormone is what? It targets what? Protein synthesis activity of the cell. Okay? I want to use one very common hormone, insulin. Are we familiar with insulin? What does insulin do? That's very good. It lowers our blood sugar. Okay, so let's use insulin as an example. Okay? So I just ate. Okay? So now, because of this one, right, my sugar will go high. Hyperglycemia. You understand this term? Hyperglycemia.
Yeah, at least 300.
Okay? So you follow so far. I ate, and now my sugar is very high. Okay? And so that high glucose level, when it gets to the pancreas, the islets of Langerhans, we're going to talk about them one by one. We're just looking at how protein synthesis is affected, okay? So the pancreas respond by secreting this hormone insulin. That's when insulin is released, when the glucose or the sugar in your blood is high. Where is this insulin going to go? It's going to go to my target organs. Can you give me a target organ for insulin? What
Liver.
cell? Very good. But don't you think that, I'm thinking every cell in the body needs sugar. Isn't that the main source of energy, right? The liver, very good. And I'm also going, do you remember we talked about the brain, right? Neurons are notorious. They always rely on a fresh supply of sugar. Remember? They don't store sugar. Do you remember? Where is sugar stored in the body? In liver and muscle. So that's why if you have low blood sugar, don't you get dizzy? That's the first that's being affected by sugar level is your brain, right? And that's why the brain is very sensitive. But we go back to this picture. So we're just going to talk about maybe liver or any cell in the body. I'm going to use neuron or any cell, okay? So when the insulin enters the target cell, this is my target cell, okay? So the insulin will tell this target cell to make glucose gates or glucose channels. You see that? I know that you know that chemicals move by diffusion, right? So after I ate, the glucose level in my blood is very high. So it's just naturally going to move from area of high concentration to low concentration. Now there's one thing that you see that is missing in our understanding of movements of chemicals. Glucose cannot enter any cell unless there's a gate. What tells the cell to make gates? The hormone. You see how important the hormone is? So normally, in the absence of insulin, even though there's a lot of glucose here, it will not enter the cell. Insulin that's how important our endocrine system is. So again, look at, I just ate, glucose is high. My pancreas is the endocrine gland that secretes insulin. So it secretes it in response to high glucose. Insulin is the key for every cell to make glucose channels. That is the only time that glucose can enter and your cells can then use it for energy. Does it make sense? What's that process? Protein synthesis. You see? Now you understand, in the absence of insulin, if there is no insulin, what happens to those patients? They remain hyperglycemic, right? What else do you notice? What are the symptoms of people with hyperglycemia or insulin deficiency? Aren't they always eating? Polyphagia. They're always eating. They're hungry. They're starved. Why? Even though the glucose is high, it's not going inside the cell.
Constantly having to use the bathroom.
Yes. But do you understand this one, polyphagia? It's not going in the cells, so the cells are being starved. And so they're also weak, right? They easily get tired. Why? Their cells, even though the glucose is useless, it has to enter the cell. You see how important your hormones are. And polyuria, constantly going to the bathroom. Why?
Flushing out the sugar.
That's correct. The glucose is creating an osmotic gradient, right? So it's making it viscous. It attracts the water, so you have a high urine output. So because of that, you are thirsty. You are drinking all the time, polydipsia. It's not too bad for your muscles. They have stored glucose, your liver, but your brain does not store glucose. It relies on a fresh supply. Did you know that there's only one hormone that tells your every cell to make glucose channels? That's only insulin. And so that's why diabetes is not a joke, right? It's a serious problem. Because there's no, when we study endocrine system, there is no other hormone in the body that tells the cells to open up and let glucose in. You see? So even though there's plenty, you keep eating, if you don't have insulin, or if your cells are insulin resistant, they will not open up to let glucose in. You see the importance of your hormones? Okay? If I ask you for the symptoms of diabetes, can you explain to me? Because there's another symptom of diabetics, and that is ketosis. Why? With diabetics, right? Because they're not able to use sugar, they still have to survive. So they switch to plan B. They start burning the fat. But as we study, when we take up nutrition metabolism, you will see that the dangerous consequence of fat metabolism is ketosis, that acetone breath, right? The sweet smelling fruity odor. That's because that's common among diabetics because they're using now the fat. You will see why this happens. So the brain, it has to be supplied. But going into ketosis, it leads to confusion. They slip into a coma if it's not controlled. But can you explain this if I ask you in the test? Everybody? Or not even me, your friends, right? You can explain to them why insulin is so important. And you tell them there is no other hormone in the body, really, that makes every cell in the body to open, to form those glucose gates. Okay, now you are seeing, we just studied in Bio 241 how cells as substances move by diffusion, yes. But now you add into the picture, yes, they will diffuse if there's an opening. So you see how important insulin is, okay? So we're now going to study the hormones one by one. Your first lecture test will be endocrine and blood. So it won't be maybe until 2 or 3 weeks from now. By the way, the secretion of hormones, it operates on a negative feedback mechanism. We always remember that negative for maintenance of homeostasis. Okay, you know that, you understand that already. We want to jump directly into the different endocrine glands. So I'm going to focus this for you. The first two endocrine glands we're going to study. The first one is your hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. It used to be, they thought that the pituitary, the pituitary gland used to be referred to as the master gland, but now they refer to the hypothalamus as being the master gland, only because of the type of hormones that it releases, okay? It secretes what you call releasing hormones or inhibiting hormones. Let me see, I have another one. Okay, so here's your hypothalamus, there's your pituitary. If you look at this picture, the pituitary is very important. Look at it, controls the activity of almost every other endocrine gland in the body. Okay? Your thyroid gland, your thyroid for your metabolism. Look at, they're all controlled by the pituitary. But the pituitary is also controlled by the hypothalamus. You see that? So the hypothalamus is really the key to controlling the activity of the rest of the endocrine glands in the body. What kind of hormones are being released by my hypothalamus? You call them releasing hormones or inhibiting hormones. So that's why they're called regulatory hormones. What's a releasing hormone? What will that tell the pituitary? So always when you study your endocrine system, you're going to study it in terms of what is the target So the target of the hypothalamus, so the first target is the pituitary, the anterior pituitary gland. It will tell it to release its hormones or not release it. So if this is releasing a releasing hormone, it's going to tell this to release its hormones. These hormones. These are the hormones. If what's being released by the hypothalamus is an inhibiting hormone, then this will not release the hormones. Do you follow?
Can you go back? The hypothalamus tells what?
Tells the pituitary to either release or not release its hormones. Okay? It's called releasing hormones or inhibiting hormones. Again, what's the target of the hypothalamus? Pituitary, right? What will it tell the pituitary to do? Release its hormones or don't release it. What do you call those hormones then being secreted by this one? Releasing hormones or inhibiting hormones. I think in your lecture test, I asked a question about a tropic hormone. So, did you notice? The hypothalamus is an endocrine gland. The pituitary gland is also an endocrine gland. When an endocrine gland secretes a hormone and the target organ is another endocrine gland, you call those hormones tropic hormones. Someone told me that it came out in their board exam. I don't know.
So when one endocrine gland tells another endocrine gland
Yes.
to release
Yes.
a hormone, it's called a tropic hormone.
A tropic hormone is a hormone secreted by one endocrine gland, and the target is another endocrine gland. So you call it tropic hormones. I don't know why they're very, but it's called a tropic hormone. I think I asked it as a bonus in the lecture test, your coming up lecture test, or even, I don't remember now, even in the reproductive system, I will ask that again, a tropic hormone. So just know what's a tropic hormone, okay? So now there are two other hormones made by the hypothalamus. Your oxytocin and antidiuretic hormone. But those two hormones are being stored in the posterior pituitary. So we're going to study that one when we get to this part right here. So the next gland is your pituitary gland. The pituitary gland has actually three parts: the anterior, the middle part, and the posterior. For our purposes, we're going to concentrate on these two: the anterior pituitary and the posterior pituitary. We have a slide of the pituitary gland. It's very easy to identify which one is the anterior side and which one is the posterior side of the pituitary gland. The anterior part of the pituitary gland is, you see the difference? This is anterior and this is posterior. So the anterior part, this one makes its own hormones. The posterior part is just receiving the hormones made by the hypothalamus and it's being stored there. The hypothalamus makes two other hormones: antidiuretic hormone and oxytocin. And those two hormones are being stored in the posterior pituitary. So if you look at it under the microscope, the posterior pituitary is like fibrous because it just contains the axon nerve endings from the hypothalamus. Whereas the anterior pituitary is epithelium because it actually makes its own glands. Are you following what you think? Okay? So there's my hypothalamus over here, right? In addition to the releasing and inhibiting hormones, it also makes antidiuretic hormone and oxytocin. And it delivers it here to be stored. in your posterior pituitary. So that's why if you look at this under the microscope, it just contains nerve endings from the hypothalamus. So you see, releases ADH and oxytocin. It doesn't make it. That's just where it's stored. Whereas this one actually makes hormones. So that's why the anterior pituitary is very cellular. It's epithelium. It's a gland. Whereas this one just contains nerve endings. Maybe I'll have a pop quiz of microscopes. Tell me which one is anterior, which one is posterior. Very easy.
So the posterior pituitary gland stores the two, ADH and oxytocin.
Yes, very
and
good.
the anterior makes it.
The anterior makes a separate groups of hormones,
Okay.
different hormones. So let's look at these two hormones first because we already have it up there. Let's study the posterior pituitary gland. The two hormones, oxytocin and antidiuretic hormone. Okay. So oxytocin is just like the pitocin. If you've ever given birth, you know what pitocin does, right? So look at the target organ of your oxytocin. You have your uterus and your mammary glands. What does oxytocin do? Isn't that the one that promotes smooth muscle contraction, right? And it's the one also that's responsible for the milk letdown. Okay? How about antidiuretic hormone? What's the function of antidiuretic hormone? Do you understand what is what's a diuretic?
Something that like takes the fluids out.
That
right?
makes you pee-pee. So when it's an antidiuretic, what does it do then?
It stops that.
It stops the pee-pee. So where is pee-pee formed?
Kidneys.
The kidneys. So look at the target organ of your antidiuretic hormone is the kidneys. It will tell your kidneys to conserve your urine. It stops you from going to the bathroom. When do you need to conserve your urine? When
When you're dehydrated.
That's very good. I will ask those questions in the test. You see, it's an automatic thing. Did you notice? It's beyond our control. It's an automatic thing. When you're dehydrated, when you're sweating profusely, automatic. This is being released by my hypo. It's amazing how the body just responds to maintain homeostasis. You said, like I'm sweating profusely, I'm dehydrated. My hypothalamus has osmoreceptors and it's detecting that I'm getting dehydrated. So what does the hypothalamus do? It secretes this, and this one goes to the kidneys to conserve water. Waiting until we're able to drink water to control and maintain or correct the dehydration, then we go to the bathroom again. Okay? Don't forget, this endocrine system is beyond your control. It's an automatic thing. That's the scary thing about it. It's automatic. Okay? We're going to see what is the scary consequence of that word automatic. Do you have any questions on these two hormones secreted by your posterior pituitary? Don't forget, it's made by the hypothalamus, okay?
Yeah, it's made by the hypothalamus, but it's secreted by the
Posterior pituitary.
Isn't oxytocin the one that they think is the what do they call it? The cuddle hormone that increases
Yes.
the affection between people,
Yes.
like during coitus, it's
Yes.
released and it makes
Yes.
those
Yeah.
lovey feelings.
It's referred to as your pleasure hormone, right? And it's one of the things that the compatibility between a male and a female, the attraction, is attributed to oxytocin. So that's why we find our mate. So mine is not attracted to you. It's attracted to my husband. So I don't know, it's just something complicated. Okay? Okay, now we talk about the anterior pituitary. Don't forget, it's an automatic thing. Let's say, because I'm going to have, in your test, I'm going to have clinical scenario. Let's say I say a patient, a stab wound patient, lost a lot of blood. Please give me 2 hormones that's automatically released to save this patient. So one correct answer can be antidiuretic hormone, right? Because losing a lot of blood, so the blood that's going to your brain is very low volume. So the brain responds by secreting this one, and it's going to go to your kidneys, conserve the PP. Okay? The things we take for granted every single day. Now we go to the anterior pituitary and look at all these hormones secreted by your anterior pituitary. Look at that. See, look at the anterior pituitary. Look, it's targeting my thyroid gland, which secretes the thyroid hormones. So the anterior pituitary also secretes what you call tropic hormones. What's a tropic hormone again? A hormone that is secreted by one endocrine gland, and the target is another endocrine gland. Okay? But there are hormones that are made by the anterior pituitary that targets an actual organ, not an endocrine gland. I want to concentrate, there's too many hormones. I want you to concentrate on number 1, prolactin. What is prolactin? That is our milk producing hormone. So what's the target organ of prolactin?
Your boobs.
Yes, the breast tissue, the mammary glands. It will tell it to make milk. How does prolactin tell your mammary glands to make milk? What is that process? Protein synthesis. Okay? That's why protein synthesis was very important for us to study with Bio 241. That's the lifetime of the cell. The bulk of every cell is mostly spent on protein synthesis. Another hormone I want you to concentrate on, no more of this, lots of hormones, is growth hormone. Very important. What is the target of growth hormone? Can you give me one? I'm going to ask you for a
Bones.
target. Huh?
Bones.
Bones. Very good. Right? What else? Muscle. Every tissue. Right? We have to grow. So the growth hormone is what tells us to grow. Growth hormone actually is not, and I'm not going to ask this in the test, but just in case it comes up or someone asks you there in the program. Growth hormone tells us to grow indirectly. What it does is it tells the liver to secrete what you call somatomedins or insulin-like growth factors that will then tell your body to grow. Let me ask you, when you're growing, right? What do you think? When you're growing, do you have an increased demand for sugar or no?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, you have an increased demand for sugar, right? Growth hormone, you need to write down in your notes. Every other hormone we're going to study have what you call a diabetogenic effect. Just think, any hormone that needs to do something in the target organ, if the effect of any hormone in the target organ is increased activity of something, let's say increased metabolism or growing, you should always think that means it needs high sugar. So all the hormones that we're going to talk about are referred to as insulin antagonists. You see the hard life of insulin? There is no other helper for insulin, only one. That's why we need to really take the diabetes seriously. It's very easy to become a diabetic because all the hormones that are being released, on an it's beyond our control. It's automatic. They are diabetogenic. What about this growth hormone? Look at. This is why, have you heard, look at this, where is that? See? Increase blood sugar. You know that they're selling the synthetic growth hormone, right? Because it's true, it is a fact that growth hormone does promote bulking up. You want, and that's why when they saw that, whoa, I'm gonna sell that, they start selling synthetic growth hormone supplements. I think I asked that in the test, or maybe not for you. I think I asked it in the 100 level. But you're going to advise them against doing that because you're going to become a diabetic. All these people doing the synthetic hormone supplements, guaranteed, after maybe 10 or 20 years, watch, they're diabetics. But they look sexy, but now they're diabetics. Why? Because of this diabetogenic. It increases the glucose level. You're going to cause, what do you call that? Overwork of the insulin. It just burnout of your pancreas. Okay? So, very important for us to look at this picture also, especially for us who have growing kids. Did you know that the diet also influences the growth of our children, right? Because of the diabetogenic effect, look at, and it exerts a negative feedback effect. So if there's high sugar, if you feed your children high carb meals, it exerts a negative feedback. So much so that the pituitary then lowers the amount of growth hormone it releases in the body. And I think this explains why, it's just my guess, in my country, we're mainly short people because protein is very expensive. So every time we eat, we have a big mountain of rice and just a little bit of protein. Carb will fill us, but then it affects our growth. That's why we're short. So for you who have children, I have Lily also, I always want to make sure we always stick to the nutrition pyramid, right? 45 to 65% of your calorie allowance. Don't go more than that because you want them to achieve their maximum potential for height. Do you understand? Okay? You understand this picture? Will you be able to explain to your friends why the growth hormone supplements, even though you will really see the effects. Oh, you look sexy, you're bulking up, you're so very attractive, but inside there's something going on. You're becoming a diabetic because of the insulin antagonistic effect of growth hormones. Okay? What is the disease related to increased growth hormone? Gigantism. So I want you to know the difference between gigantism and acromegaly. Both acromegaly and gigantism result from too much growth hormone. But gigantism results when the growth plate is not yet closed. So in children, if they have an increase in growth hormone level in the blood, they will be giants. But you can have a pituitary tumor after your growth plates have closed. And it can start releasing growth hormone. So then that condition is called acromegaly. So acromegaly is excess growth hormone after the growth plates are closed. And you will see them. Who was that famous wife of, was it Roosevelt? They said has acromegaly. So you see, it's disproportion. A lot of times they're protruding tongues also. Was it Roosevelt? They said has acromegaly. But you see the difference, okay?
So one is before the plate closes and the other one's after.
After the plate closes, okay? What is the opposite? It's called dwarfism, right? So they're dwarfs if there is deficiency of growth hormone. Okay? The next endocrine gland we're going to study is your thyroid gland. Let's have a break first for 5 minutes.